Hello everyone, we are now entering into part 5th of Aristotle's Poetics. I am Dr. Neelofar Kohri and we are discussing Aristotle's Poetic, and in last 4 parts we have discussed the summary of 6 chapters. Now let's move on to the chapter 7 to 9. Now Aristotle elaborates on what he means when he says that the action of a tragedy is complete in itself and with magnitude. We have already discussed the definition of tragedy given by Aristotle, and he says that tragedy should be complete in itself and having some grandeur or magnitude. So what does he actually means by this? We are going to discuss in these following chapters. For a plot, by when he says that a tragedy should be complete in itself, he means for a plot to be complete whole. It should be a complete whole. And what is a complete whole plot? It must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is a point that does not necessarily follow from anything else, which naturally has consequences following from it. Like whenever we saw any serial, any movie, any drama, we are concerned with the beginning. The beginning should not miss, because whatever prior to beginning is irrelevant to us. For us, what is irrelevant? The beginning. And the action should follow in such a way that it should appear that the consequences has been naturally following the beginning. Then end is a point that naturally follows from preceding events but does not have any necessary consequences following it. The end is a point which naturally follows from the series of action, series of events that had happened throughout the course of plot, but does not have a necessary consequences following it. So they are happily married after. Okay, when many movies end at this, and we are not concerned with what comes after that. We are concerned with the end only, and the end should not necessarily follow any consequences. It should not be leave unsolved. Okay. Then the middle, it is a point that is naturally connected both to events before and after it. So there should be a proper beginning, there should be a proper middle which follows a beginning and which is followed by an end. And the events of the middle should be connected in such a way that they proceeds the beginning towards the end. Then the magnitude of the story. So from the complete whole, the poetry should be complete in itself. We have understood that Aristotle talks about the completeness of plot, the wholeness of plot, which should contain a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, and everything should come naturally before us. Now the next point, the magnitude of the story. What does he mean by the magnitude of the tragedy or the story? The magnitude of the story is important as it is in any art. In any art, magnitude is very important. Paintings are neither infinitesimally small or monstrously big because they must be of such a size as to be taken in by the eye. If a painting is going to be very large, very big, monstrously big, so it would not be able for the viewers or the watchers to see all the things in one go. Okay, he cannot capture with his eyes everything in one go. He would have to look one by one to all the aspects. And similarly, it should not be very much small, as small that you should use magnifier glass to look at the painting. So it should be of a considerate size so that it could be captured by the eye naturally. Similarly, a tragedy must be of a moderate length as to be taken in by the memory. Like, it should not be as long as that you are going to forget what are the incidents or events which were happening in the beginning, and why the why the middle is going to be very complicated, and they should the audience started waiting for the end, like in the Ekta Kapoor serial we see. Okay, So it should be of a moderate length so that it could be captured by the memory. Usually time limits are set by the audience or other outside factors. If audience are enjoying the drama, if the TRP is increasing, the director will increase the episodes of the story. Okay, in the same way, the time limit is set by the audience or other factors. If there is no other drama prepared, the director could be asked to continue or take it for the longer time. But Aristotle suggests that the longer the play, the greater the magnitude. The magnitude will be appropriate if the play will be longer, provided the poet can hold the tragedy together as one coherent statement. If it is in the capacity of the poet or the writer or the dramatist to have a hold on the whole content, and it should it should look like a coherent statement, like a pleasurable statement to the audience, which gives them pleasure, which attracts them. So far so good. So it depends upon the capacity of the poet. So the tragedy should be long, it should not be very short, and the longer it will be, the more its magnitude is going to be. It would be appealing, and it should be in the hands of the poet to capture it all together in one go. So the tragedy should be of a considerable limit. As a general rule of thumb, he suggests the action should be long enough to allow the main character to pass through a number of necessary or probable steps that take him from fortune to misfortune or vice versa. So as a general rule of thumb, as in common sense, it is a common sense that he suggests the action should be long enough to allow the main character, okay, or the protagonist to pass through a number of necessary or probable steps, that the protagonist should pass through considerable steps and a number of necessary steps that take him from misfortune to misfortune or misfortune to fortune, vice versa. So the events should go step by step, one by one, so that the main character or the protagonist, it should look like, yes, this can happen to anyone. Okay, so step by step he should move forward. Then he talks about the unity of plot. Aristotle says, when insisting upon the unity of plot, he makes it clear that he does not mean that it is enough to focus the plot on the life of one individual. If you are talking about the life of one individual, it is not going to be a successful plot. Our lives consist of all sorts of disconnected episodes, and the story of a man's life would rarely have the completeness necessary for a unified plot. When we talk of any story and we talk of real life, in real life, a man, a single human being, passes through or meets many people in one single course of day. He passes through many incidents and events, and when one tragedy occurs with him, it comes with many other things. There are so many things responsible for that. So our lives are consisted of all sorts of disconnected episodes, and there are so many disconnected things also. So a man's story, if you are going to take one individual man's story or man's life, it would not frame, or it will not provide you a complete necessary unified plot. There should be unity of plot. The plot should be unified in itself with a beginning, middle and end. But if you are going to copy a common man's life as it is not going to happen, that because we have so many disconnected episodes in our lives. Rather, the poet must select some series of events from a character's life. Okay, now it is the responsibility of the poet to collect series of events from the life of the character. You should choose first, he should choose some particular character which should be appropriate for the tragedy. Then he should try to put each event in a series, and the event should be selected from one particular type of story. Okay, they should be part of one story. Like if I have so many parts of my life, there should be only one. Like the story of my marriage should be narrated into a story, into the drama. So It should be only the events related to that marriage should be taken into consideration. For example, he gives the example of Odyssey. Odysseus was a very famous warrior, and his life has went through so many changes. He had fought so many battles, but this Homer's Odyssey is centered around one single battle, one single incident of his life, and the events taken are also into a series. They are entangled together. Okay, so he should try to craft them into a clear whole, into a complete whole. Any part of story that could be added or removed without any great effect on the rest of the story is superfluous and takes away from the unity of piece. If you can remove any incident or event easily, like in the subplots, it is going to be a superfluous element and unnecessary element of the tragedy, and it takes away or it mars the unity of the piece. That particular piece should be unified in itself, and it takes out the unity of that particular piece of work. So the incidents or events should be designed in such a way that not a single part can be removed and nothing outside can be added into the course of the story. Aristotle now distinguishes between poetry and history, saying that while history deals with what has been, poetry deals with what might be, and it represents the possible as probable or necessary. So history deals with particular incidents, particular facts, but poetry deals with what can be. Poetry is a universal thing, while history is particular. Poetry is superior to history because history always deals with particular cases, while poetry can express universal and general truths. So he establishes the superiority of poetry over history because history is particular and poetry is universal. Next, he says in the course of these 3 chapters, tragedy gives a feeling of necessity or at least probability. Tragedy is a kind of poetry because it is the Poetics was written in those times when tragedies were written in poetries. So tragedy gives a feeling of necessity. It is our requirement, it is our need. No one enjoys, there are very many less people who enjoy studying history because it is based on the facts, but a tragedy or a drama can be enjoyed by anyone because it gives us a probability of thinking so many things, the way certain characters behave in certain situations, and thus gives us insight into general principles regarding fate, choice, and so on. So it is not about one particular character, but by using the story of that character, we can say that how should one behave in a certain situation, and what are the general principles regarding the fate, regarding the destiny, etc. Then he talks about the worst kind of plot. What is the worst kind of plot? Is the episodic plot, where there is no seeming necessity or probability whatsoever. Like in one episode, one incident ends, and in the other episode, other incident begins. No, it should not be like that. The story of the whole plot should go like this, that one act is necessary to follow into the second act, and the second act is necessary to follow into the third act. So episodic plot, he does not enjoy or he does not like the episodic plots because there is no necessity or probability between the events. Cannot be seen any probability or necessity between the events. Now finally, he says, as a medium that arouses pity and fear, tragedy is most effective. As a medium that arouses pity and fear, tragedy is most effective when events occur unexpectedly and yet in a logical order. So, when we are says that the function of tragedy is to arouse pity and fear into the audiences, into the people who are witnessing the tragedy, who are seeing the tragedy, watching the tragedy, it should say that the event occur unexpectedly, but there should be logic behind it. Things should be unexpected. That if a warrior like Odyssey can face so many problems in his life, if a hero like Amitabh Bachchan can face so many problems in his life, why can't we? But this is not expected. But there is a logical thinking behind everything, but there is a logical order behind everything, and that logical order should be followed in order to have an effective arousing of pity and fear. The ideal is to have the audience see the final outcome of a tragedy as the necessary consequences of all the action that preceded it, and yet have the outcome to be totally unexpected. So the result should be unexpected, but the incident should be logically interwoven with each other. So that is about the chapter 7 to 9th. In the next lecture we will discuss further chapters from chapter 10 onwards. I hope I could explain myself. I was very much clear, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me to the comment box, or you can directly message me on my WhatsApp number. Thank you so much for watching. Keep listening.